The most important thing is getting the economy going so we avoid a recession.
You've said that you won't give any handouts for energy price rises this autumn. What are you going to do?
Well, what I will do from day one is reduce taxes.
Why are you ruling out direct financial support to help people struggling with the cost of living?
What I'm talking about is enabling people to keep more money in their own pockets.
It's a mantra that hasn't changed until today.
So you are ruling out cash payments in whatever form to people then, and you will only help people through tax cuts?
That's not what I said. I'm not going to announce the contents of a budget in the future at this stage in August, but I can assure people I would do all I can to make sure that energy is affordable.
Rishi Sunak's campaign pounced on that change in tone today, his team accusing Liz Truss of, quote, a major U-turn on the biggest issue currently facing the country. Mr Sunak, meanwhile, vowed he's helped with bills before and will again, but gave no details.
Those numbers are worse than the numbers I was looking at as Chancellor when I announced that support, and that's why I do feel a moral responsibility as Prime Minister to go further and get extra help to people over the autumn and the winter to help them cope with what is going to be a really difficult time.
The cost of living crisis isn't just hitting us all at home, but on the public services on which we all depend. At Exeter Road Community Primary School in Exmouth, 45% of children are on free school meals. Their costs are soaring, while budgets are set in stone.
Our gas and electricity bill is usually around £20,000. That is now looking at doubling plus. I think the cost of living prices are going to force more families into poverty, and that will mean that more people need to claim free school meals, which they're entitled to, but schools are stuck in the position where the funding we get for those meals is not keeping pace with the costs of staffing and the costs of food for us to provide them. And therefore schools are subsidising out of their funds that need to be spent on education.
The government needs to spend £8 billion more this year to replace what inflation has stolen from public services, according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies. To fill the gap so far on the ideas board from both people who want to be Prime Minister, not much. As the leadership hustings rumble on, both candidates may remain vague on help, but in 2 weeks the new price cap is set, with prices kicking in a month later. On September 5th, a Tory leader will be crowned, and the next day they'll be made Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak says he's waiting for the autumn to announce more help. Liz Truss says she'll have an emergency budget. But they'll have to be quick, because Parliament rises on September 26th for party conferences, and on October 1st, the new higher price cap kicks in, which is estimated to be around £3,500, just in time for winter, when demand rises and rises. Right now, of course, most of us do not have the heating on. But energy bills are spread out throughout the course of the year to keep them even, so many of us accrue credit during summer, which will help us come winter. That's changed, say Uswitch. Uswitch say that bills have gone up so much that right now households owe £1.3 billion to energy suppliers before winter even kicks in. The desperate state both household and public finances face has been called a national crisis by campaigners. Does anything you've heard in the leadership race bear resemblance to what you're seeing of the extra funds that are needed?
The two candidates have spent lots of time talking about the tax cuts they'd like to implement if they became Prime Minister. Neither has really spelled out their vision for public services and public spending. Neither has really grappled with the fact that the NHS has had its busiest summer ever and is heading into what could be an extremely difficult winter, and some extra funding could be required. It's not the be-all and end-all, but I think that reality needs to be addressed up front.
A Treasury Minister today said the government is working on a fully costed cost of living support package to present the new Prime Minister in September, just in time for the summer sun to set ahead of a long and expensive winter.
Well, I've been speaking to the Conservative MP Mark Harper, a supporter of Rishi Sunak. With his team accusing Liz Truss of moral and political misjudgments, I began by asking Mark Harper to explain why.
She said that she wanted to deal with the energy price challenge by way of cutting taxes, not giving people what she called handouts. Now, the problem with that argument is that her proposal is to cut the national insurance rise, get rid of the national insurance rise. The problem with that is it would give the Prime Minister a £1,810 tax cut, great, but it would give a pensioner zero help, and it would give someone working their socks off full-time on the national living wage £59 a year to help with their energy bills. Now, that just doesn't work. It would leave somebody on a low income or a pensioner unable to heat their home during the winter. And I think that is a moral question, and that's why Rishi has said that it is going to be necessary to directly help the poorest and most vulnerable people, as he did in the big package of support that he set out when he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
But she's also said she hasn't ruled out doing more on payments, and Simon Clarke, who's very senior advisor, also says, you know, there will be more to be done when she's in government. I mean, in the real world, she's going to have to, isn't she? And you know that.
Well, she's still saying that if you tax people and then you give people their money back, she's saying that's some sort of Brownian economics, and she's not in favour of it. Now, the problem, of course, with that argument is we're not taxing people and giving the money back to the same people. Our tax system is progressive. It means taxing people on good salaries, like what a Member of Parliament gets paid, and you help people who are on lower incomes deal with this massive energy crisis.
She says you're all sort of Gordon Brown sort of fans, yet she was in government with this apparently Gordon Brown type Chancellor. Do you think she's dishonest?
All of the things that she's complaining about now were decisions of the government that she went along with and agreed with, at least publicly, when she was a member of the cabinet. I mean, you know, one of her team this morning described the national insurance rise as Rishi Sunak's national insurance rise, but he was very happy to defend it a few months ago and saying that it was progressive, it was necessary to deliver resources for the health service and social care, and if you didn't do it, the alternative would be lots more borrowing.
I mean, do you not feel, though, a bit wrong-footed in that she is clearly running a campaign that has learned the lessons of Brexit and the 2019 election? She's not talking about facts and details. She's talking about emotional responses and saying things people want to hear, and it's going down quite well with a lot of those Tory voters. You are trying to bombard her with, you know, inconvenient truths, and the electorate aren't interested in that.
Well, let's see, shall we? I've been a member of the Conservative Party since I was 17, and I've met lots of Conservative Party members over the years. They are prepared to have somebody be honest and truthful with them about the scale of the challenge and the difficult decisions that have to be taken to deal with it. So let's just see, shall we, where we come out in the end.
Isn't the trouble, though, that he also has not said what he would do on energy bills? He's just said, I'll do more of what I did before. And he hasn't said what he would do about inflation. It's all just trust me and don't let her in.
On the energy prices, he's been clear that you've got to wait and see what the price cap is going to be. He could see a few weeks ago it was going to be higher than we'd expected, which is why he made his statement about getting rid of VAT on fuel, on energy, as something you could do quickly and deliver some help to people. He's been clear that he would use the same framework that he set out, so some direct help on bills, some money directly to the poorest and most vulnerable. You can't confirm those details until you know what the price cap's going to be. On inflation, that's largely something that the Bank of England will deal with through monetary policy. What the government needs to do is not make things worse, and permanent, unfunded, large tax cuts are going to make that worse, make it harder for the Bank of England to control inflation.
Mark Harper, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Well, joining me here is Policy Manager for Energy at Citizens Advice, Abhi Jitendra. How urgent is action now? I mean, aren't we in the summer? Heating's off. Why should bills be high now?
So what we're seeing already at Citizens Advice is very much a cost of living crisis for many people. So we've already given out 120,000 referrals to food banks and crisis support, which is more actually than 2019 and 2020 combined. So for many people, it's very real already. Now, when we look to October, when energy bills are likely to go way upwards of £3,000, then so many more people are going to be facing a cost of living crisis. So it's so urgent that people act now.
Are the people who are coming to Citizens Advice paying direct debits, or are they paying on metered bills? I mean, you know, when do the bills start going up, basically?
So for many people, even on direct debits, they've seen their direct debit increase already to match how expensive the actual cost of energy is. That rise was in April. In October, that's going to rise again. For people on prepayment meters, it might be that they're paying a bit less in summer, but actually when those rises come in October, they're going to be hit with bills of hundreds of pounds. We calculate that in January of next year, a prepayment customer who's paying as they go for their energy could be paying something like £500 just to keep the heating and lights on right after Christmas. So it's just so important that government really is looking at what the problem is and trying to fix it as soon as possible.
And is it just the price of the energy bill that is the key lever, or are there other things you think government needs to be looking at?
So we think there's three things that government should be looking at right now. So the first is benefits, really boosting benefits, getting money to people who need it the most. The second is looking at that prepayment issue, because we know that if you can't keep up with your direct debit, you might be forcibly switched to a pay-as-you-go meter. And as I just said, those costs are going to be completely unaffordable for loads of people. And then finally, this crisis is just so terrible. The prices are just so high that it's actually going to be a wider group of people than the people that we tend to see struggle that are going to struggle. So what we need to see is possibly some broader support. There's already an energy support grant. Could that be increased? Could other support be directed directly through energy bills? There's a lot on the table, but really we need some really big ideas to stop what is looking like a really impending disaster in Christmas.
I mean, the government might say, look, it's August. The government's, always on holiday now anyway. Do you think there needs to be action now, or is action in September, when both the candidates are saying they will look at this, going to do it?
I mean, our worry is that it might well be too late by September. We need money in people's pockets the moment that the energy price cap rises, which is on October the 1st. Any later than that, well, to be honest, people are already facing a cost of living crisis, and it's only going to get worse. So really, it's far too late.
Because some of our viewers might be saying, well, who are these people? Are they in-work benefits recipients? Because obviously there's also, a shortage of labour in all sorts of parts of the workforce. So these are not people who are sitting around just claiming benefits, presumably. They're people who are in work and reliant on benefits.
Absolutely. So there's more people on universal credit who are in work than out of work. But we also know that many of the people who are out of work are disabled and simply cannot be cutting down their energy usage during winter. So again, it's just so important. The people who we're speaking to at Citizens Advice, many of them have absolutely nothing left to cut. We're hearing of really impossible cases like people who are deciding between buying the bus fare to go to a hospital appointment and putting money on their electricity meter. So there's really nothing left to cut, which is exactly why government needs to step in.
Well, you say some people can't turn the heating down. I mean, there are all sorts of campaigners also talking about cutting consumption. Is that feasible for the people who are coming to you?
Absolutely. I mean, there are definitely things you can do, turning off the lights when you're not in the room, turning down the boiler if it's safe to do so. And looking long term, can we get energy efficiency measures in people's homes more cheaply and more readily? But actually, in this winter, at the prices we're looking at, it's generationally high. It's really unthinkable. If someone would have said last year that energy bills were going to be £4,000 or more, it would have seemed completely ridiculous. But that is the reality we have now, which is why government needs to step in.